Todd, welcome to the show. Thanks for everything you're doing to keep America safe. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me.
So the first thing I want to start with is that we hear a lot about I mean, we hear a ton about not just what the federal government is doing, but the results they're getting. For a lot of people, though, we hear about ICE, which is what you're leading right now, and Customs and Border Patrol. Can you just explain what are the different roles of the two agencies? What do you guys focus on, and what does
Sure.
CBP, Customs and Border Protection, do?
Sure. Well, pretty easy for the CBP side of the house between the Office of Field Operations and U.S. Border Patrol. They are protecting the ports of entry and obviously the southern and northern border, as long as with our waterways. What ICE does specifically is we focus on targeted enforcement inside the interior. That means at-large criminal aliens, known as suspected terrorists that are foreign-born, those people that have been ordered deported by a immigration judge or a federal judge. That's what we focus on. So inside ICE, there's two components in our law enforcement section. You have Homeland Security investigations. They do everything from human smuggling, sex trafficking, counterproliferation. They do a lot of counterintelligence work. And we have an enforcement removal operations. That division focuses on the foreign fugitives in the country, criminal aliens that have final deportation. They work with host nations to remove individuals. So it's a pretty robust operation that we have nationally and globally that ICE is working 24 hours a day to protect the homeland.
So is it fair to sum it up by this? CBP focuses on trying to keep people out, but once they get in, that's where ICE steps in?
100%. That's the best way to say it, Sean. So like I said, especially for the enforcement removal side, we're focused on removing those threats to the communities that have gotten in or that have been ordered deported or committed a crime that haven't left or been released. That's what we're focused on.
Okay, so what are the priorities of ICE right now? Walk us through when we hear all this noise from the media and the left about people getting deported, innocent people getting rolled up, people who were here legally. Just what are the priorities of ICE in terms of how you guys look at who should and should not be in the country?
Sean, right off the bat, we focus on the worst of the worst, right? We're focusing on those criminal aliens that have committed crime, those ones that aren't here to have the American dream, those ones that are preying not only on American citizens, but on other migrants in their communities. We're focused on those. We're focused on the worst and the worst. We're also focused on those national security threats. You know, under the last administration, we have so many individuals that were let in that weren't properly screened that are known as suspected terrorists, right? The president designated the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. We have so many of these foreign actors in our countries. Then we're also focused on the people that are exploiting our immigration system. There's over 2 million that have been ordered deported, lawfully deported, had their due process by an immigration judge, yet they failed to leave. That's what we're focused on. We also are focused on anyone that breaks immigration law. You know, in the past, Sean, we would turn a blind eye to someone who was just here illegally, who hadn't committed a crime. Not anymore. We're enforcing the full portfolio that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is sworn to do. So if we go out there and we arrest a criminal alien, but there are some other people with them that are here in the country legally, we're going to take them because we're not going to turn a blind eye. It's a federal law to be in this country legally, and we're going to enforce it.
I wanted to get at that because to me, that's the important thing. And Tom Homan, I think from the top has been clear about this. If we go into a house or wherever, there's a bad guy there that's committed a crime, but there's 5 other people here illegally. Maybe in the past we'd look the other way and those people would stay, but not now. And that's what I think the media and a lot of people don't get, is that you don't get a pass just because you hadn't committed a crime at the same rate as some bad guy that's getting rolled up.
Yeah, Sean, I always use the example of a regular, like a state or a local police department. If that police officer pulls a car over and they search the car or they arrest the driver and they ID everyone else in that car, and that person may have a civil infraction or a warrant out for them, that police officer isn't going to walk away from those individuals. It's the same with ICE. They're sworn law enforcement officers. They uphold Immigration Nationality Act and Title 8 U.S. Code of Immigration Law. And we're not going to just stand by and let someone break the law. We're going to enforce it. And I think that's what we're doing. I think that's one key thing the American people need to know is that ICE is going to enforce the law the way it was written.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this conversation, but if you're looking for a way to get to sleep tonight and stay asleep, I've got the answer for you. For over a year, I've been taking Beam's Dream Powder. It has made a world of difference. I fall asleep faster, I stay asleep, and I wake up ready to go. If you want to join me by taking one scoop every night before you get to bed, go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer at checkout for up to 40% off. Trust me, everything stems from a great night's sleep. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer, code word Spicer. All right, back to the conversation. And don't fall asleep yet. So speaking of the law, when I hear a lot of these stories in the legacy media, they'll say people are being deported and deprived of their due process. Respond to that.
It's the farthest from the truth. I really wish people would educate themselves. And I think, Sean, a lot of it that you see is the left media, all the historic media, not wanting to tell the whole story. There are so many cases that people have gone to immigration court and have had their due process, been ordered deported. They applied to the Bureau of Immigration Appeals. They've gone to whatever circuit they live in. Some cases have gone to the Supreme Court, yet they refuse to leave because there's some notion that there's a right they're allowed to stay even after they've been ordered deported. I think for so many years, the immigration system and immigration law has been so watered down to be interpreted by so many different administrations under executive order that the real meat of it is lost. And that is, if you're here in the country legally and you have your due process and you see a judge and you're ordered removed, deported, it's time to go. And we never did that before. And under this administration, that's what you're seeing.
Okay, but let's just get to the crux of some of the left argument. If you are in this country not through legal means, have you broken a law? Because the left will argue they haven't broken the law. And is that a technicality or is that just not true?
No, it's just not true, Sean. You have broken the law. If you overstayed your visa, if you came between our ports of entry and you were not inspected or, came through a lawful means through our ports of entry, you've committed a misdemeanor. You've broken the law. If you come back in after you've been deported, we see this a lot, right? Someone's been deported, they come back in without authorization. That's a felony. And that for us, that's what's really important for us. We have a lot of local law enforcement that encounter these individuals that commit a crime, yet they've already snuck back in the country. Well, that's a felony in the presence of those officers, yet their jurisdictions won't allow them to act on it. So I think, Sean, which kind of your point, a lot of the crux of that is what we hear from the left is not the truth of what actually happens with immigration law.
So let's talk about the results, because I keep seeing these statistics about net migration at the absolute lowest it's been in years, number of people deported. What are you guys, when you report up to Secretary Noem and to the president ultimately, what does Todd Lyons say that ICE has accomplished in the first 6 months of this administration?
You look at that first 6 months, we have almost 150,000 people that have been arrested by ICE compared to the past where those numbers were extremely low. Sean, if you look at our days, under the last administration, we used to run what was called Operation Crosscheck. Be a month-long operation. We might have 200 to 250 individuals nationwide arrested. You're seeing days when we're arresting 1,700, at the height 2,400. And 70% of those people, Sean, have a pending or a criminal conviction. So those are actual criminal aliens we are getting out of here. So luckily, Secretary Noem sees us every day. She's out there with us. She knows that we're going after the worst of the worst. And she's happy to report to the president that ICE is going ahead and doing what his administration wants, what the American people voted for him to do, and that is to get those criminal aliens out. But Sean, I think one thing you do see is the fact that ICE still has such impediments in our way of doing our law enforcement duty, whether it be from the threats, doxing, crazy leftist judges, or crazy rulings, that even though we still have these impediments in our way, we are out there making the streets safer by getting these criminal aliens out of here.
So, Todd, one of the things that blew my mind is in the past 6 months, ICE has deported 214 sex offenders in Houston alone. Like, to me, if I were the people of Houston, I'd be like, Todd Lyons, send more, send more. To your point about the impediments, I'm like, why are people, it blows my mind when I hear some of these folks gathering and saying, we don't want ICE in our community. And I'm like, do you realize who ICE is getting rid of?
Yeah, and I think, Sean, unfortunately, a lot of our good news stories, if you will, just don't get out there. Look at what just happened in New Jersey. you have a criminal alien that gets arrested for domestic violence in 2023. He's not turned over to ICE. Gets 2 DUIs from May until June, not turned over to ICE. Then he goes out, drives drunk again, and kills a mom and her daughter. Yet you have these left politicians and these media outlets that have demonized what ICE does. These are the people you want in your neighborhood. I think the American people are extremely happy with what ICE is doing. Yet, Sean, you see it. We're called Gestapo, the Nazis, right? And you need to sit back and really look at who we are actually removing from the country. And I think that would change a lot of the narrative.
So is this a PR problem, like that you need more outlet? Like, what is it? Because I agree with you. When I see the statistics, number one, I'm just excited that our country is safer and we're reestablishing the rule of law. But I look at the results that ICE is getting and getting these individuals who are perpetrators, criminals, bad people out of the country. What is it? What is it that you need more of? More agents, better PR? Like, what is it? What would help you?
I'm extremely proud of our PR team. We've been doing a ton. Secretary Noma's given us such leeway to get out there and get our message out there. No matter, like the impediments from before, we're still getting it out in the big sanctuary areas. What I really think, Sean, is centric media needs to report the good work we're doing. For so long, we played defense, where we were only responding to bad stories, right? No one wants to lead a newscast with what ICE is doing, because for some reason the narrative is ICE is doing the wrong thing. And it's the farthest from the truth. I think that's what's leading to a lot of the assaults on officers, because we're painted with such an evil brush that a lot of Americans who are opposed to the ICE mission aren't understanding exactly what we do every day.
So talk to me about morale, because I feel like on the one hand, if I went to work at ICE, I would, in the last 4 years, I'd be like, hey, I came here to do a mission and I can't do it. Now they can do the mission, but you've got a lot of folks demonizing them. What is morale like for these folks?
I can tell you, Sean, I've been doing this for almost 20 years and morale's never been higher. Yeah, it's extremely stressful. Don't get me wrong. Obviously you've seen a lot of officers wearing masks. And it is stressful because assaults on officers are up 830%. Unfortunately, that number is going to go up this weekend because we had several assaults just this week alone. Officers are being doxxed. Their families are being threatened. And a lot of it is because of this crazy rhetoric, which is also coming from elected officials. Morale is high, and I think it's getting higher because now with the big, beautiful bill, we're able to give the officers better equipment, better means, hire more officers to help us with our, really strapped field officers that don't have a lot of personnel. And Sean, to your point, last 4 years, we had a lot of people retire or leave service just because they didn't feel like they were doing the mission. They weren't allowed to arrest anyone. They were just letting people in left and right, not allowed to do proper vetting. We have the opportunity now to hire those people back. Our recruiting's great. Joinice.gov. We have almost 79,000 applicants right now, people that want to do this job. And obviously that's going to help. But I really think, Sean, the men and women at ICE are proud of the work they do. I'm proud to brag on them every chance I get. Anytime I have an opportunity to do an interview and say, what the great work they do every day, that's some of the bravest men and women in law enforcement. But Sean, it is pretty stressful when you have you go to work and you're being assaulted by someone that's not even the perpetrator you're arresting, or your family's being doxxed because of the job you do. That's extremely stressful for these officers and agents.
I remember, Todd, it's not just that you stand up for your agents, you defend them vigorously. And I saw that one press conference where you came back to the podium and said, yeah, they wear masks. Do you know why? Because people are putting their names and addresses out on the internet and threatening their families. I just can't imagine. I dealt with this on a personal level where people would come to my house or put my address and stuff. But when you're in law enforcement, upholding the laws that are on the books and having your family, I got to feel like one of the things that I thought was interesting is people would ask me all the time, do you feel safe when I worked in the White House? And I'd say, of course, I would feel safe. My office is literally 25 feet from the Oval Office. If I don't feel safe, we're in big trouble. But I'd say my family is what I worry about, because when I'm at work, I got like 1,000 people around the president with guns, Secret Service protection. My family, though, doesn't. And so how is it for those families of your officers? Did they feel like they're getting the support that they need?
They do. I think we have a great peer support program. I think they know that Secretary Noem takes all steps to make sure we're, making not only officers and agents safe, but doing what we can for their family. And Sean, like you, I take it personally. One reason why I did get fired up at that press conference and go back was because in 2022, under the last administration, when ICE wasn't being targeted like it is now, my family got targeted by Antifa. So I personally know what it's like to have protesters and people that want to do your family harm to show up at your residence, right? They put 23 body bags in my lawn with a 16 by 24-foot sign that says Todd Lyons kills for ICE and listed my address everywhere as a sex offender. So I know what the men and women of ICE on the ground are going through, right? So I want to do everything in my power to make sure they're protected, because under the last administration, no one did anything for my family. So I'm not going to let that happen to the men and women of ICE now.
Yeah, I mean, I can laugh at this now, but literally, someone put my house up for sale. I always, I joked with my wife at the time, like, how much? Because maybe we'll do it. But it's not funny when it comes down to it. I tried to make the most of the situation. Can I just get back to like priorities, right? Sure. And you guys are obviously getting the worst of the worst, as I mentioned, 214 sex offenders in Houston alone, other criminals that are trafficking young women. But how does that work, like in terms of what should the next few years look like? Is it we go to just criminals and then what? Like, how does it cascade?
Sean, when we first started this, we obviously said, okay, we're going to focus on the worst of the worst, right? We'd focus on the worst of the worst that have final orders, and then the worst of the worst that haven't seen an immigration judge yet. And then as we go down, we go, let's focus our priority on people that have final orders that haven't left. Obviously, it's at the very top of that will always stay known as suspected terrorists or any act of threat against the United States. But what we found when we just ran a large operation in Massachusetts, these sanctuary jurisdictions, we can't focus on priorities because we were focused on the worst of the worst that had been convicted. But in real time, while we're up there doing this operation, they were releasing more. So we had great numbers for that 30 days in Boston. The problem was, as we were trying to arrest the ones that have been there and the worst of the worst for dozens of years in some cases, in real time, criminal aliens were being released. So for us, until we can get a handle on the sanctuary city issues, for us to have like targeted buckets or targeted enforcement, because our priorities are constantly moving, because we don't want that public safety threat to get released, because like we've seen so many times, they're just going to disappear again. So it's having that split focus and making sure that we can go worst of the worst, but respond to immediate threats is what's really hampering us right now.
So when you're in a place like Boston, I get that Mayor Wu is not a friend of ICE. She's very clear about that. But do the Boston PD, did they kind of go to the ICE agents, hey, this isn't us. We want to help. I mean, I get off sort of, is it a wink and a nod? Like, hey, we want to help you, but we can't. Is like, what's that relationship with local police jurisdictions, whether it's Boston or New York?
Yeah, I could tell you rank and file. The folks, men and women on the street, they are pro us. They want to help us. They want to be brothers and sisters in law enforcement. Obviously, their leadership is not. But Sean, I've said it many times before, right? What kind of world do we live in where a law enforcement officer is threatened with suspension, loss of pay, or being fired for helping another law enforcement agency? When I was a field office director in Boston, it was an early Christmas gift all the time, because the city of Boston would love in December to highlight how many detainers they didn't honor or how many criminal aliens they didn't turn over to us. And the number was always wrong. As an example, my last year there, they said they didn't honor 11 detainers. Well, it was actually over 300 criminal aliens they didn't release, which I loved letting the people of Boston know that, hey, look, you're being gaslit, right? These criminal aliens are being released and going back into your community where we could have arrested them in a safe, secure environment and taken them out of your neighborhood. So to your original question, the rank and file, the men and women of law enforcement across the country, they are with us. They support us. But unfortunately, a lot of city leadership and a lot of senior leadership in law enforcement just, won't support ICE the way they should.
It's insane to me, just the idea of, like, if you gave that example in New Jersey, there are people that could be alive. There are people that wouldn't have had a crime perpetrated against them. To me, there's a lot of crazy policies on the left. That being said, I'm very open about my positions. But the idea of saying I defended a criminal is insane to me. I just cannot believe how you can go back and say, could you please vote for me? I kept this bad guy on the street because I didn't want to turn him over. Like that I've never gotten that. But I want to, the last question I have for you, Todd, is this. The president was on CNBC this morning. He was asked about immigration. And one of the things that he was asked about is like farm workers. And he said, we got to find a balance here because his words, not mine. He said, we need them. How do you guys look at that? Like, is it, where do farms and some of these hospitality workers fall on your list?
Sean, that's where we actually put our criminal investigator hats on, which I have to give all the props to the Homeland Security investigations who work under me, the special agents. What we do is we go and we focus on those key things that those special agents are good at: human trafficking, sex trafficking, human smuggling. Unfortunately, there are so many American businesses that will make an extra buck on the backs of these illegal aliens. Well, so what we're going to do is when we have criminal tips, we're going to go out there and execute those search warrants, execute those criminal warrants. One thing I like to always highlight is the LA riots. We have so many people from the left that say, if you guys only had a criminal warrant, we'd support you. If you had a warrant signed by the judge. What started June 6th was a criminal investigation at a work site. What happened at the marijuana grow facility was a criminal search warrant that exposed human trafficking, child trafficking. That is what we are focused on. So while we're going to arrest those illegal aliens that are working illegally, we're also focused on these businesses that are acting as a criminal enterprise on the backs of these individuals. That's what we're going to focus on.
No one ever wants to say that, do they? They talk about this cannabis place being rated, and yet it's like, yeah, but don't you care about children because they're being exploited? No one wants to tell that story. Todd Lyons, thank you for everything that you and your agents are doing out there. I really appreciate the work that you're doing to keep America safe. And again, just for what it's worth, a big thank you for that.
Sean, thanks. I really appreciate the support. And I really thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on and really brag on the men and women of ICE, because they're real true American heroes.
Well, they deserve it. Todd Lyons, thank you for everything that you guys are doing at ICE. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Look forward to it.
You bet. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.